A good night of Shabbos. I would like to start with a commercial. This coming Monday night will be Lag BaOmer. Please God, I'll be joining together with at least 18,000 members of the Jewish community across Australia and New Zealand for an 18-minute program featuring national, international speakers, singers, and community members celebrating Jewish pride. Together we will make history. This has never happened before in Australia. There's so many Jewish people coming together to celebrate with such unity and pride. Please go to www.18for18.com.au. Last week, we were speaking about the essence of creation. We were speaking about how God conceals himself in creation and where it is very difficult for us to be able to remove the concealment, to remove the mask, and to see godliness. Indeed, we spoke about the fact that we are aware of the fact that the essence of matter is on the physical level, are the atoms, which are the building blocks, and we don't see them. But we obviously know that it is the atoms that actually create, so to speak, physical matter. In the same way we don't see the atoms, we don't see the godly energy that energizes the atoms. But indeed, without the godly energy, the material matter could not exist. And the Alter Rebbe in Tanya gives an example for that. He speaks about the fact of an individual that will throw a stone upwards. How long will the stone remain moving upwards? Only as long as the power that propels the stone remains around the stone. Once it dissipates, it will fall down to the ground, because the natural state of the stone is not to fly in the sky. In the same way, creation has been, the Almighty created the world from nothing. And the world can only exist as long as his power remains in the world. And as soon as that power is removed, then it all disappears. And this is what we have merited to see at unique and special times where God removed his concealment and we saw the power of creation. And this was at the time of the splitting of the Red Sea. And indeed, we spoke about the fact that when the Mashiach will come, all the concealments will be removed, and we will then be able to see godliness. Therefore, miracles are really extremely important, because when there is a miracle, then we are able to see beyond the concealment. When there is a miracle, we come face to face with the hand of God. However, can we see a miracle? When do we see miracles? Isn't it true that miracles only took place at the time of the Chumash, where we read about the splitting of the sea, or in the prophets where we speak about Elijah and Elisha, where they did miracles which were beyond the laws of nature, where it seems that the laws of nature were suspended. And there are quite a number of other examples that I'm not going to mention. But these were in biblical times. But can we ever see miracles? Can we ever see the hand of God where it is unquestionable that it is God that is behind creation. So we need to understand, when we speak about a miracle, let's speak about the concept of the word in Hebrew. The word in Hebrew of a miracle is a nes. A nes is a miracle. It's interesting that the word nes in Hebrew also refers to a high point. You place a flag al hanes. The flag is put on a high place. The concept of a miracle is to elevate a person to a higher level of reality. That's the purpose of a miracle. And indeed, it is interesting to note that the word nisoyon, test, which we have discussed at length, is really the purpose of human existence, to be tested and to be challenged, also comes from the same root, because as a result of withstanding the challenges, one achieves an elevated level and possibly can come to the recognition and realization of godliness. But can we see miracles? We don't see any biblical miracles around. Has God stopped making miracles for the Jewish people? Has he stopped the concept of revealing himself? So we need to understand that within the holidays that we celebrate, we have two different types of holidays. One is a holiday of Pesach, another is a holiday of Purim. What is the difference between the holiday of Pesach and the holiday of Purim? The holiday of Pesach is a holiday that commemorates a situation where God suspended nature. There were miracles which actually were beyond the scope of nature. Purim, however, commemorates a miracle which does not defy nature at all. Purim commemorates a miracle of a whole series of events, which each incident on its own could be seen as a natural phenomenon, but it is only as a result of putting together all of these incidents over a period of 10 years do we see the amazing miracle how Hashem delivered the Jewish people from those that wanted to destroy them. From the time that Achashverosh made a very big feast, and during the course of his feast, he instructed his queen to behave in a certain fashion that she was unhappy to do, so she rebelled against the king. The result of that was that he put her to death. Ultimately, he then sought to find another queen, and that was a very long process. And who was that other queen? Queen Esther, who, unbeknownst to him, was from the Jewish people. And then event after event just fell into place, where after Haman decided that he wanted to destroy the Jewish people, and he convinced Achashverosh to do so, then there were a series of events where Mordechai, who was a minister in the king's repertoire, was able to defy Haman himself, who considered himself to be a god. He wanted to be deified. And the whole story of the Megillah, until ultimately the king permitted the Jewish people to stand up for themselves, to wage battle against those that were going to destroy them. So, and this was, each event took place over the period, as I said, over the period of 10 years. And each event on its own seemed to be a natural occurrence. But it is only when it is put together where you're able to see the hand of God. But the hand of God was concealed in nature. And that's one of the reasons that Purim is a holiday that people celebrate by putting on masks. Why do we put on masks on Purim? No, it's not for health reasons, for social distancing. Why do we put on masks? Because the whole holiday of Purim is a holiday where God concealed himself in nature. The Megillah that we read on Purim is the only Hebrew document in the canon of Hebrew writings, the 24 holy books, in which the name of God is not mentioned even once. Now, one of the reasons that are given is because of the fact that this became the document of the Megillah Esther became an official document from the government of Shushan, of Persia, and therefore this would be translated into Persian, and they would, if God's name would be included, they would change God's name for the name of their idols. But the real reason is because God is concealed, and God wanted to show us that his presence is not limited by removing the mask of creation. Indeed, his presence is found in the laws of nature itself. As a matter of fact, it is interesting to note that Maimonides, in the Guide for the Perplexed, actually discusses the issue of the miracles that suspend nature, and he asks a question. If nature is created by God, why should God permit nature to be suspended? And he answers, it is because during the course of creation, God inserted these miracles. So it does not go against the laws of nature. This is part of the nature of God's creation. There are other commentaries who maintain that the miracles that came to suspend nature actually occurred at that very time. But in truth, there's no contradiction because it occurred at that very time, and this in itself was part and parcel of the creation. And indeed, we are told that one of the conditions of creation was for the Yam Suf, for the sea, to split when the Jews were going to present themselves at the edge of the Red Sea. So we see that conceptually, the idea of a miracle is not limited to a phenomenon where nature is suspended. And according to Chassidus, there are these two levels of miracles, and there are sub-levels in these levels. There are levels where within nature there are different levels of concealment or revelation. But in general terms, you have one level where God shows that because he is the creator of nature, he has the ability to change nature, or where God shows that nature itself is a vehicle for his presence and for his guidance. Now that level of miracle, which we call Teva, and Teva is Shem Elokim. We know that the miracles themselves that are beyond nature are from Shem Havaya, this name of God that is the name of the essence of God, the name of mercy, the name of Rachamim. However, the other miracles are within the framework of nature, Shem Elokim. And again, it is interesting to note the numerical value of Elokim is 86. Hateva, nature, is 86. Shem Elokim is the godly power that has created nature. And that is there for the concealment, because even though when we open our eyes, we are able to see clearly that nature is nothing more than a vehicle for God revealing himself in a natural way. However, people have free choice. And when you see a miracle that suspends nature, it is impossible to deny. If you, however, see a miracle within the framework of nature, if you do not want to believe, you will try to find any excuse under the sun that all of these incidents were nothing more than coincidences and had nothing to do with the hand of God. And I want to speak a little bit about the miracles that we ourselves, I'm going to speak about the miracles that we ourselves individually need to recognize. And let us not forget, every single day in our prayers, we thank God for Al Nisecha Shebechol Yomi Monu. We thank God for the miracles that you provide for us every single day. But I want to speak about, in addition to the private miracles that we experience, I want to speak about the national miracles that in our generation we have experienced. I'm going to start off speaking about Israel, speaking about the fact that our nation was able to reestablish itself against all odds. And I want to just speak a little bit about the circumstances which are so clearly divine. The establishment of Israel was associated with a miracle of Hanukkah, no less than the miracle of Hanukkah, where Hashem gave the many into the hands of the few. And in addition to that, God hardened the heart of the Arabs, and they enjoined the Arabs to do battle against the state of Israel, against the Jewish people. Had the Arabs not declared war against the state, instead agreed to the partition plan, the state of Israel would have lacked Jerusalem, a large part of the Galil, and several areas of the Negev. And there were so many other instances where the Arab stubbornness has benefited Israel. For example, Yasser Arafat's rejection of Ehud Barak's extremely generous peace offer at Camp David in 2000, and President Clinton's even more generous proposal in December 2000, as well as President Assad of Syria's rejection of Barak's offer of 99% of the Golan Heights in 1999. Just imagine if the Golan Heights would have been in the hands of Syria when we had this uprising in Syria itself. Had the Mufti of Jerusalem accepted the 1937 Peel partition plan, Arabs would have controlled more than 3/4 of Eretz Yisrael. Finally, had the Arabs accepted the 1947 UN partition plan, the very large Arab population in Israel, which comprised of very large families, easily would have outnumbered the Jews, and the Arabs would have assumed control of Israel by democratic means in a decade or less. The Rebbe used to say that the miracle is that the Arabs refuse to make peace. The miracle is that the Arabs refuse all of the compromises. And that in itself is part of Hashem's plan. And I will just bring out, in regard to in the War of Independence, there were so many, many miracles. Miracles which could verily be said are clearly the hand of God. I'll give one instance, one example. In the north, the Arabs were encamped at the top of Har Canaan, which overlooks Tzfas. Anybody controlling Har Canaan controls the whole valley below it, the cities and the roads. And it was an impregnable position. It was impossible to dislodge them. What could the Jews do? So, what they did, they brought up what was called a Davitke, a tremendously noisy mortar that was extremely inaccurate and of little tactical value. One Friday afternoon, they fired a Davitke several times, and the noise was enormous. And then a miracle happened. It started raining. Now, it never rains in May or June in Israel, but it started raining. The Arabs that were there believed that the Jews had an atom bomb, as a result of which they ran away as far as they could, and they took all the Arabs with them, and as a result of which the Jews were able to capture Tzfas, and the Arabs were driven out of the entire northern area of the Galil. Now, there were so many such instances, and it is so hard not to be able to recognize that in our own generation, God is showing his hand in a most miraculous way. And it is really therefore so sad that when it came to the Declaration of Independence, they refused to mention the name of God. The name of God is nowhere, neither in the Declaration of Independence nor in the national anthem. Like in the United States, we have the belief in God on the dollar in the Declaration of Independence, both in the United States and Australia and so many other countries. And it really is so difficult to understand how people could not recognize that without the hand of God, all of this would have been impossible. I would just like to be able to conclude and to say, there is a very famous statement from Reb Nachman Breslev. Reb Nachman Breslev says that it is essential for Jews to believe in miracles, but to believe that we experience miracles, that we see God in nature. And he says that when all of us will move away, throw away our disbelief, and accept the belief in God's providence, that's when the concealment of the exile will come to an end, and that is when the Mashiach will come. I wish you all a very good Shabbos.